about their experience at the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji. So I would say at this point, you may, if you're not already on speaker view, you might want to switch to that just so that you can see the faces of the team as they're sharing. But yeah, I'd like to welcome some guests to our presentation. So Team Bones is Roy Malone, Mary Chandler, Jen Seger, and Charles Trippanay. Team Bones competed in the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji. Unless you've been living in the woods for a while, you'll probably know that that is now streaming on Amazon Prime, 10 episodes. I think really well done. We're already seeing really an incredible bump in interest in adventure racing since that show came out in mid-August, which probably warrants further discussion, but we will save that for another evening. Tonight, we really just want to hear some stories from Team Bones, hear about their experience on the show. I will also say, spoiler alert, there are no kind of off limits topics tonight. So if you haven't seen the show, just prepare yourself, or mute or something if we are going into something you haven't watched yet. A little bit of background on Team Bones. So they're a really experienced adventure racing team who's raced all over the world since 2001. And they regularly occupy a top 20 spot in the AR World Series rankings. They raced as team number 47 on the world's toughest race. And for those who know a little bit more about the inside story of the race, we had hoped they'd get a little more airtime because they actually had a pretty exciting race themselves, and were competing with Bend and out there for that top US spot. But of course, in the magic of TV, perhaps that got a little bit overlooked. But we'll hear more about them and their experience now. So how we're going to format this is I'll start out with a question to get them going, but for everybody else, please start to put questions into the chat feature. So you can post them to everyone, any questions that you're interested in hearing Team Bones answer, and then I'll start to kind of feed those questions to the team. Let's see, and I will say for anybody, it looks like most everybody from Team Bones has unmuted, but I'm not sure if, I can't see Mary in my list, but if you're from Team Bones, definitely unmute yourself and hopefully you'll start to pop to the top of people's screens here. But why don't, whoever wants to speak first from Bones, why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about how your team came together to race in Eco Challenge Fiji? How'd you select your team and what were your goals for the race?
Okay, well, thank you for the introduction, and we're super excited to be presenting today and appreciate all the work that you guys are doing with USARA. It's refreshing to see the kind of interest that we're now getting in the sport, obviously thanks to Eco Challenge. And what I'll do is I'll start with a little bit of history about the team, and then I'll let each of my teammates kind of talk about how they joined the team, why they joined the team, and I guess then we'll get into the Eco Challenge if you'd like. So Bones started in 1998 racing 24-hour races. Yeah, it's 1998. Yeah, that's right. 22 years ago. Racing 24-hour races in California, a series called Calico. Our first expedition length race was in 2001 in New Zealand called Southern Traverse. And we had such a good time with Southern Traverse. Then in 2002, we did the first Primal Quest, which was in Telluride, and then we did Eco Challenge Fiji 2002. So that was, obviously a good experience for us going into 2019. Ever since then, we've been racing between 1 and 3 expedition length races for the last 19 years, a bunch of 24 hours in that span as well. And we also did the first 2 USARA championship races, I think the only 2 that were held on the West Coast, back in the, I think it was early 2000s, where we took second both times. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Roy Malone. I'm captain of Team Bones. And I'll let the rest of my team. I think I've got Mary Chandler, I've got Jen Sager, I've got Charles Trippanay, And David Egbert, I believe, has joined us as well, and he was the TAC for Eco Challenge. So I'll let each of them kind of introduce themselves and talk about why and when they joined the team. Mary?
Hey, I'm Mary Chandler. Yep, Above Bones. It's fun to be on this meeting. I see a lot of familiar faces that I haven't seen since the last time I think I showed up at a USARA race. So, but yeah, I've been hanging out with Roy for quite a few races. I think we've done 11 expeditions together. I know a lot of you know I bounce around on a lot of teams, but I always come back to Roy, and we have a lot of fun, and we had a great time at Eco Challenge with Jen and Charles. Sigs, your turn.
Hey everyone, yes, I'm Jen Sager, or Siegs as I'm known in the AR world. Calling in today from Squamish, so I am the Canadian on the team, other than our TAC, of course, David. So yeah, I have been racing against Roy and Bones for I think most of my 18, 19 adventure racing career, and I took a little break after having a baby, and in 2016 Roy messaged up and asked me to come out of retirement to go to Worlds in Australia, and I couldn't refuse. Sounded like a really fun team he was putting together, and I felt ready to get back into things and had an awesome time. And then I've just been racing with Bones and a few other teams over the last couple of years, but this team's been a blast to race with, and it was also my first time actually getting to race with Mary and actually with any other female, and that's brought a whole nother really super neat dimension to the sport for me. So yeah, it's been a good couple races thus far.
Hello, my name is Charles Tupenet. I'm actually from Switzerland, from the French-speaking part of Switzerland. I was team captain of Team Switzerland, and when I moved to the US, like now it's 5-6 years ago, I got in touch with Roy, and we started racing together. So I joined the team at that time. I do live in Bend currently. We are under thick, heavy smoke. The AQI, just for the record, is around 540. So there's no way for me to go outside and to do anything. So hope for you it's a bit better. Otherwise, yeah, the Eco Challenge was really great to race with sorry, Roy, but with two legends, with Mary and Jen, and for sure Roy as well. Yeah, I think that's about it for me.
I guess it's my turn. Hi guys, my name is David Egbert. Let's see, I've been doing this with Roy Malone since back in '98. I think Roy and I watched the first Eco Challenge, one of the first Eco Challenges together. And we both started racing those Cal Eco races way back when. And then that took me in a little bit of a different path. I am one of the co-directors and owner of Primal Quest. And yeah, so it's been a long, exciting career. And when Bones, and specifically Roy's been a very close friend of mine for a long time, reached out and said, is there any way I could go and TAC for them for Eco Challenge? I absolutely was going to get on board with that. So it was an incredible experience, and I'm super proud of this team.
So I'll just finish the answering your question. I guess in terms of going into Eco Challenge, what our expectations were. Internal, obviously you go into something like that with a big unknown. There's a lot that can happen. We've got a lot of experienced racers on the video call here that anything can happen. Things go high wire, bike mechanics, injuries, whatever. But we did expect to be. We wanted to be in the top 10 overall, and we wanted to be the first U.S. team, and that was our two goals. We just missed on both of those, and like a lot of folks probably on this this call, we've applied for 2021, and hopefully we'll get a chance to make that happen.
Fantastic. I think we would love to see you guys go at it again. So we'll be rooting for you again. And I know, yeah, my team resubmitted as well, but fingers crossed, I guess.
Yeah.
How about, could you tell us maybe a little bit about the days leading up to the race? I think for a lot of people on this call, that might be kind of a question mark area of just, before any expedition race, I'm sure you have your routines and the preparation that you go through, but especially with this one, tell us a little bit about those first few days, or I don't know how long you actually were there before you started in Fiji. How much time did you have to devote to your usual race prep? How much did you have to do kind of for the TV show specifically?
Charles, you want to take that specifically as it relates to, outrigger canoeing, kind of the stuff that we don't normally do in an adventure race?
Yeah. Okay, I don't exactly remember the exact number of days we were before, but it was like kind of almost a week. When we arrived, we're really we were welcome in the race HQ hotel, which was like a really nice hotel. So we had all the place, the space, and all the logistic to be able to prepare for the race very efficiently. I have to say, with all of us have a long experience on preparing races, so it's usually not hectic. It's usually pretty smooth. Mary, for example, is absolutely spot on and prepping all the different equipment, thinking of everything. So I would say it's kind of a usual type of race. The huge difference, as you can imagine, was about all the outside of the race itself. So the media side and the eco challenge aspect of it. So we were very surprised to see like a full-on LA style media crew and taking pictures, and everything is extremely well done and prepared. Everybody's super professional, and I have to say, all of us were really impressed by how smooth and how well it's organized. I mean, I never seen such a race prepared in so many details, especially with the number of teams there and the amount of people working around the race. So
one of the cool things was our ability to take a navigation class from one of the locals. One of the disciplines was sailing a Kamikawa boat. So there was a couple of teams that actually built one before the race, so they got a chance to try it out. But for the rest of us, none of us had really sailed a Kamikawa. So a couple of days before the race, we were able to track down a local and get both sailing lessons and navigation lessons from them, which obviously, unfortunately, because there was no wind, we didn't get a chance to take advantage of the sailing. But the navigation part of it was pretty interesting.
It was as well organized regarding the famous gear check and practice. They organized like within the hotel 5 or 6 different stations. One of them was to get on a hand on those famous Kamikawa, the famous boats, and again we had special people there giving us some instructions. We had a rope course which was bolted inside, outside of the hotel. So that was pretty funny to see that. And yeah, all those aspects. So went pretty well. I mean, we got, especially actually on that side, got the famous situation where the baggage were kind of lost on my transit. So I actually got most of my baggage, my bike, roughly hours before the gear check. So that part was a bit stressful, but I mean, yeah, it's kind of standard, and everybody had that happening once.
Oh, that's the worst nightmare there when you're traveling across the
Yeah.
world with all your stuff.
Yeah, and it was just blocked in Seattle actually, so
Okay.
it was just around the corner. So, but yeah, it's very stressful, but I mean, yeah, that's how it is.
We've had a couple of questions coming in on the chat, and I can say to all listeners, please keep them coming. It's great to see what people are thinking here. But one person mentioned just your fantastic race report. You guys always put together a nice race report from your races. And it was just a sort of as a follow-up, we were wondering, did you feel like you had to censor yourself at all in your race report? Or did you feel like you could kind of put out there your whole experience in the race, knowing, of course, the sort of full national or international coverage on Amazon Prime that you got?
Well, the nice thing for us is that since we got zero coverage, I can put it out there and make sure
Fair enough.
nobody would know the difference, right? No, I mean, it was an honest depiction of kind of our race. I mean, I think that, hopefully it gave everybody a good idea as to what racing internationally at an eco challenge really brings. I mean, it's hard to put in words how big it is. For those who were there, they can attest to it. But Amazon spared no expense. Every vehicle we saw there, every boat we saw there, half the houses we saw there all had eco challenge decals. I mean, it seemed like they employed half the island in some form or fashion, whether it was logistics or food or whatever the case may be. It was just an amazing experience, and to get out there and see and interact with the locals. It's just a special race, and it's something that hopefully everybody here on the call is aspiring to. And I know that for the 5,000 applications that I'm sure they got for this race, there's only going to be a handful of American teams that'll get to go. But at some point in your racing career, I highly recommend you continue to try and get there, because it's really something that's life-changing.
Yeah, actually, maybe you could say a little bit more about that, given that you guys have so much experience racing internationally, and ARWS races, other really well-organized events. How would you say that Eco Challenge differs? Clearly, there's going to be a lot more cameras and things like that, but just the race itself, did you find that it was comparable to other, let's say, ARWS events, or was the race itself bigger in certain ways?
Well, Mary, you've done 44 expedition length races, so you've got the most number of races under your belt. Why don't you kind of compare and contrast?
I'd say the biggest thing I noticed that was so amazing was everybody around us who wasn't even a racer knew what was happening. Every village we crossed knew what was happening, and it was just amazing. I mean, it still makes me sad that when we had the world champs in the US, what was that, 3 years ago, nobody knew. Even in the town of Casper, it was like a handful. And I'm not blaming the race director. It's just the sheer number of being able to market things and have volunteers and everything else. It's just unreal how Eco Challenge was just everywhere, anywhere you went. And even post race, I mean, there were a few normal people staying in the hotel with us, and most of them knew what we had been doing, or they were so intrigued by our just gear everywhere to ask us questions and find out more. Whereas I feel like a lot of places I travel, it's, people kind of, the culture is amazing in every other country, but you just don't have the same kind of exposure. We're kind of more like phantoms that cross through these villages, and why are these people going through our village in spandex and bright lights and riding bikes that are more than our house? But Eco Challenge, everybody knew. They knew exactly what we were doing, and all they really wanted to know was what country were we from, were we first? And if you said you weren't first, then they're like, are you last? And we're like, no. But it was just, they all wanted to be a part of what we were doing, and it was just, that whole production side was amazing. And then the second thing I would say is, from a safety standpoint, I don't think there's a safer race out there, because they had no limits on, they had a plane circling the island for 11 days straight to make sure that our satellite signal radio would talk to somebody, to make sure if somebody needed help. I mean, I'm sure we've all been in races where you bust out the sat phone and it doesn't work. And it's just part of the, the technology and the communication budget. And they had every chance, between the number of helicopters flying over, you really knew
Just the ego.
if you saw a helicopter. So it was just unreal.
Yeah, absolutely. Our team unfortunately had to make that sat phone call. So I know we were very happy that there was a phone. For those who didn't know about this, they were just to get sort of radio coverage over the entire island, the main island of Fiji. They had an airplane flying over in this sort of figure eight over the island at all times so that they could sort of radio the signal up and then down to headquarters. So yeah, definitely. I think Mary, your points are really right on there. We've actually had a couple of people, maybe especially since Mary's talking here, we can loop Jen into a couple of comments about just the 2-2 configuration of your team. So 2 guys, 2 girls, and just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that, since anybody who's watched a lot of expedition racing will often see 3 guys and 1 girl. And just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that team configuration for you guys and just what the strengths are of having 2 females on the team.
Big.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, this is the first time, I guess, going back to Primal Quest, the other year was the first time I had actually raced 2 females, and I never thought it was actually something that I would do. And when the opportunity came and Roy said, Mary and I had raced together, I was like, it's awesome. We're racing with probably the strongest female in the sport. I think what's really unique about it is that we truly have to function as a team. Everybody has to pull their own weight. The gear gets distributed pretty evenly amongst everybody. We don't really have one workhorse per se who can just always carry more. So everybody's got to constantly just step up and do their part. I don't know. I feel like with Roy and Charles, they value us, just as much. There's no difference in sort of seeing us as being females. Mary and I both put a ton into our training so that we can be strong out there and be productive and helping members of the team. But I think it's really just comes down to how all 4 of us work out there. When Mary pulls out her Oreo cookies, everybody takes one. We're just constantly sharing and just doing whatever we have to do to move the team forward. And besides all that, our dynamics are fantastic. We just have a good time, and there's just lots of laughter, and everybody just gets along so well that it flows really well. Mary, you want to add to that?
Yeah, totally. I agree with all that. I think that's one of the best things about adventure racing is you see a lot. It's not just the woman on the team is not always they're not the weakest person that most people would expect. I'd say most of the time we're the toughest boys, but
don't disagree, Mary. Don't disagree on that.
but just in general, it is kind of crazy how the dynamics change a little bit just by having 2 women and 2 guys, and it's not anything bad. It's just different, and I don't know how to describe it. It's good. It's not like I'm sitting there, Jen and I are having little girl talk, or we need to go to the bathroom together when it's time. It's just slightly different, but I don't know if things are a little bit calmer maybe when you don't have 3 guys kind of going head to head. But I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but racing with Jen I've only raced with 1 other woman, and yeah, it's definitely different. I don't know if I can handle racing on an all women team, but I do like having the guys around, but it's just kind of comes down to the team dynamics in general, and it really doesn't matter male or female. It's really the chemistry of the team and how you all work together more than anything.
And Kate, I would add, as one of the males of the group, when I'm picking a team for a race, I'm looking for the strongest athletes. regardless of gender. And Jen and Mary are, you know, are nails. I mean, I can take, you know, I can take them to any part of the world and know that there's no drama. Not only they're carrying their own weight, they're carrying my weight, or I'm on tow. You know, so the reality is these are the two best, one of the best athletes, male or female, in the sport in the United States. And so I'm really honored to have them on the team.
Well, I can say, you know, it's just watching the show is so incredible, seeing so many really strong female athletes out there. And I mean, obviously Mary and Jen were out there too, you know, maybe deserving a little more airtime, but although I will say, I thought it was funny, Jen, every once in a while I'd see a shot of your face in like a hardcore kind of scenario. And it was sort of like whenever they needed a shot of like, this was really hard, they might flash Jen's face, which I thought was appropriate.
And believe it or I did smile and laugh out there, and it just never seemed to make the cameras. So.
I will say too, the top Thunderbolt from Australia was 7th. They had the twins. They had 2 women on their team. So it wasn't definitely, we weren't, I mean, we were unique as having 2 women and 2 guys, but there's another team out there and they were solid. It just proves that it's not, you know, it's not the all guys team that's really gonna
Totally.
do it.
We had a question from a team who I think must have read your race report. So they wanted to know how you guys predicted the freezing swim at the top of the waterfalls and how to know that you should bring inflatables and paddles for that section. Any comments there?
I'll let Mary take that one. It was her call.
I'll say I've never been so happy to see the water in a race course. No, I had read Roy's race report from the previous one. And, you know, many times in adventure racing, we're always thinking, what could we bring to help us, you know, go faster and you know, some little strategic thing that will make us, you know, make or break the next section. And Roy and I were looking at the maps before we left for that section, and we're staring at this long river that was at the top of the climb. And we both kind of smiled and said, I think this is it. Let's break them out. So David busted out our bag of tricks and handed us each our little inflatable dinghy. And it was, I don't know, I was just laughing the whole time. That's probably why I didn't make the show. Most people were crying in that section. And we inflated our boats and the camera crew was going nuts. They jumped in their boat and they're like, how'd you know? And it was just, I don't know, it was super fun. And it was worth carrying a little extra weight that we did. And yeah, I've already been out. I think I've spent more time this summer playing around in that boat than my kayak. It's just too fun.
Wow, I can't believe we missed that. It would have been nice to see some footage. That's yeah, that was a section that obviously destroyed a lot of teams. So that's a pretty cool trick.
And it was a risk, right? I mean, half the time when you think you're smarter than the course, it ends up biting you in the butt, you know, whether it's bringing sails and there's no wind or the wind's blowing the wrong direction. So, you know, we knew that we would have to carry essentially, 3.5 pounds for an extra day and a half on the off chance that we may or may not be able to use them. But, you know, to Mary's point, in my 2002 race report, we had actually swam that same section and it was absolutely miserable. I mean, in fact, one of the girls got stung by an eel in that section and had to get life flighted out or helicoptered out in 2002. And so I think none of us wanted to risk, you know, that again. And, you know, fortunately it did work out this time.
We have a quick follow-up. So somebody wanted to know what kind of boat was it and how long did it take you to get through that section?
I don't know if we want to review that kind of trick, but but if you search on Amazon, you'll find some super lightweight packrafts that are totally worth, you know, $100. And what was the rest of that question? How long?
Oh, how long? Yeah.
You know, honestly, I think we could have been a lot faster had we not been just so giddy about it and just been a little more efficient and more, you know, push a little faster. Instead, we were just kind of playing, I guess, in a way. We kind of, not saying we weren't racing, but I think we could have, you know, done a little more damage. But there was a warming 10 after that section that I think had there not been, a lot of teams would have just had a lot of trouble. It would have been pretty dangerous for them because that water was, even us sitting in our boat, you know, we get in and out of the boat several times and it was raining and it was night. We were cold. So I couldn't even imagine trying to swim that. So, you know, I think all in all, we definitely moved faster than we would have, especially since I absolutely hate swimming and I may have been the first race I started crying in, but I don't know. It
was a good choice.
It was just too much fun.
It was mentally, even like this, mentally was really long, and it was like pool after pools, and we were thinking of the teams that had to swim through that, and every time we're like, we can see a corner, and then after the corner is going on and on and on, and even paddling that, it was like so impressive. So I cannot imagine honestly swimming that.
It looked brutal. We were, I guess, lucky enough to be helicoptered out before that section for my team, but that was not a regret really that we missed that one. Mary mentioned David, and I was wondering if David could maybe talk a little bit more about his role on the team, and just, you know, for most people listening here, you know, it's very unusual to have a crew person at an expedition race. So just hearing a little bit more about kind of what that TAC role was and how you guys used that TAC as a team.
Yeah, you know, crude races, kind of when adventure racing first started, you saw a lot of crude races, and then things slowly progressed away from them. I think you know, Roy has said it many times, it's awful fun to have a crew there rather than just a box that you've got to put together, and it helps to bring your spirits up. And I've been lucky enough to been on both sides of that, and when you can rock into a transition and somebody can take care of your feet, or you don't have to break out the jet boil and make your own hot food, you know, that's an advantage. It just gives you something to look forward to. And I think in a race as long as hard as Eco Challenge, in any expedition race, when you have a chance to come in and get pampered for just a short period of time, it really makes a big difference. When you have to sit there, and if it's dumping down rain, and then you've got to put a tarp up, and you got to put your bike together, and you have to prepare your food, and you're trying to get out of wet gear, and when you can just rock in, get into a chair, and have somebody help take care of your stuff, yeah, it's a big deal. And as far as this team goes, yeah, I don't think I'd accrued for any other team. I mean, just they are definitely representatives of the sport for such a long time. I'm not sure if you took all the expeditions of all this team and we played that game in one of our meetings, is how many expeditions each one of these racers has done, and then you add them up together. It's pretty impressive, and the experience, you know, it says a lot. But the thing that really says a lot about Team Bones is what they have done and what they continue to do for this sport. They represent the sport with a tremendous amount of respect. They're a team that everybody seems to want to gather towards. They'll ask them questions. They have a tremendous amount of respect for each one of the racers. They're always there to support each other and support everybody else. I don't think I ever hear a negative word come out of this team, even when they left that last paddle to the finish line and spent 45 minutes on an island waiting for the Eco Challenge to let them go again. You would never hear them really talk negatively about anything. So yeah, I was just super proud. It was a great opportunity for me. Hey, I can deal with their gear. I mean, they're pretty easy to take care of. You know, they all have their little quirks at times.
But care to say more about that?
Well, everybody knows, like, so Mary is meticulous, right? Every little zip tie and every little thing, and she takes the minimal amount of gear you could possibly manage, right? And then Charles got gear like strung out everywhere, and he's always standing around in his underwear and sometimes not. Charles is the guy that's always naked in transition. There's no doubt about it. Roy's always Mr. Cool, right? He's always pushing. He's always bringing everybody up. He's always the person kind of cheering everybody on. He's, the kind of the foundation of the team. And Jen is just this. Jen's interesting. Jen makes everybody smile. And I think she's like part of the glue that brings the whole team together. And everybody's got so much respect for her. And they're all badasses. And I think Roy put it really well with his team as far as when people ask, does this team is it 2 girls, 2 guys, and what's that like? I always stop and we always think like, we don't even think that way. I don't think this team thinks that way. There's not one person that I can say on this team is the weak link, or one person that's going to tow everybody or carry everybody's heavy pack. They're all so good, and they work together that, they're just a unique and individual and super strong team that, it was a super fun experience. As far as tacking goes, oh man, you don't get to sleep much. You get to drive on the wrong side of the road in horrible rainstorms with absolutely 2 days of no sleep. And then you rock in and you get to know what it's like. You hire some of the locals to build some of your stuff for you. So you have these awesome setups for the team. And it was a great opportunity for me to see. One thing you noticed probably with the Eco is a lot of the old schoolers were there. So it was a great opportunity for me just to hang out and kind of talk to some of the people that I haven't seen in a long time. So it was a wonderful experience for me. And I just thank these guys. I couldn't thank them enough.
And I just want to add on to that in case you guys, I think they explained it in the Eco Challenge in the show, but we were required to stop for an hour and a half at each transition. And at first when we found out about this, I was kind of mad because I feel like that's such a waste of time, but it is amazing how quickly an hour and a half can disappear when, one, we haven't seen David for 2 days in between each, or I think a day to a day and a half between the TAs. And I don't know if we were tired of talking to each other, but we were so excited to see David that half the time we were just talking and telling him stories about what we were doing that like a half an hour would go by and we're like, oh crap, we gotta, get changed and focus. So for anybody doing that again, like next year, it's like, you gotta set a timer. You gotta be on that because it's too easy to lose so much time in a TA when you think you have way more time than you ever, than we're used to having.
Absolutely.
We were always feeling very sorry for David when we were leaving the TA because everything was set up amazingly well when we arrived, and we're rushing through that and leaving a huge mess every time. So
just your path, though, Charles. Just your side of it.
Not
just yours. Not all of ours. Just as to your corner.
Okay.
Charles was leaving a huge mess. Wonderful. Yeah, I think any TAC who thought they were going to Fiji for a vacation had a really the wrong picture in mind when they signed up for this. But great, we're getting a few other good questions in here. One that's coming up a couple of times from people is just wondering, a big race like Eco Challenge, up to 11 days, how do you train for that? How do you step up your training so that you can be prepared for such a big event?
Well, as far as my training goes, typically, quote unquote off season, it's between 10 and 15 hours a week, just, standard disciplines, kayaking and mountain biking and trail running. Going into a larger expedition, it's usually between 15 and 20, about 2 to 3 months out. But with Eco Challenge, because there's disciplines that are unique to kind of the sport, a lot of the time had to be allocated towards, for instance, how do you steer an outrigger canoe? Yeah, how do you move efficiently in an outrigger canoe? Do you have sailing experience? If not, at least 2 people need to get, some hours underneath a sailboat. Stand-up paddleboarding. Some of us have done quite a bit of it. Jen does quite a bit. But I think the other 3 of us, it really isn't a sport that we do a lot of. And so what would normally be allocated towards kind of the 3 core disciplines were otherwise allocated towards new disciplines where we're learning the skill, trying to get efficient, hopefully hiring coaches to get us up to speed as quickly as possible.
And I think the beauty of the fact that we have raced together before, there wasn't really, I mean, as much as it would have been fun to have some group long weekend training sessions, this particular group, you know, like I said, we've raced before, so we kind of knew how we would be out there. So that's, you know, if you're new to that combination of people, it's always good to try and get an adventure in together. But, you know, I mean, we're all over the country, countries, and it just made it more difficult. So we all had to distrust that we each did our own, you know, that we were all coming to the race prepared on our own, and made it work. And we all had to, exception of Jen, I think we did, Charles and I and Roy all got inflatable stand-up paddleboards because, like you said, we've never been on one, and it was totally worth the money because we spent a lot of time on SUPs, and made it a little bit easier, especially at 2 a.m. in the dark when your first time standing on a board. Not what you want to start out in. So there's a lot of single blade training for me.
Yeah, and I think too, because we knew this was going to be a race that was very water intensive. So, you know, you sort of take your programming, what you're going to prepare for, and you know, you've got to put a lot into various types of paddling, you know, into this race. So a lot of time, I think additional time was spent on the water, and that's never really been, I don't think, a huge strength of Bones. It's, you know, an area that we continue to all work on and will continue to work on moving forward. But I think we all put a lot of time into water preparedness for this one. So that definitely helped.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was an unusual race in that every paddle was a single bladed paddle, and unlike a lot of expedition racing where there's some kayaking in there, you know, or even a lot of kayaking, that was a pretty unusual part of it.
We did use our bamboo stick as a kayak paddle, so
oh sure,
you know, we didn't have to get that in there.
you didn't gondolier it? That was another popular. Yeah, those Billies. So some other people are wondering, okay, so the swim after the waterfall was not your worst section. So what was your hardest section, and how did you overcome it? What did you have to go through as a team to get through?
I'll start because I dream about it every night, or at least I did for the first 6 months after the race. So we made a tactical error. I made a tactical error. I think it was camp 3 where maybe it was camp 2. Anyway, it was the camp right before getting to the river section, the whitewater section. Camp 2, David's giving me the 2 numbers. So that had a dark zone, right? So we had to get there by 4 o'clock in the afternoon in order to make the dark zone and not get stuck there. When we were arriving at camp 2, we looked at the maps. When we looked at the distance, we thought, you know, there's plenty of time. We've got all kinds of time to make that up in a bicycle. We're going to take one of our sleep cards. Each team had 5 sleep cards of 3 hours. You had to utilize them during the course of the race. And so it seemed like an apt time to be doing it. It was pouring down rain. We had just come in, it was at night. So we did use our sleep card, and we got up and we powered off on our bikes, and we're super, super strong. Didn't make any navigation errors, but what had started out as really good tarmac and gravel roads, about 2/3 of the way through became the notorious peanut butter trail, right? Where it became essentially unrideable. It was so slippery, it was so thick, and it collected on your wheels and your chainstays, and half the time you're carrying your bike. And then, you know, having those hours burn through your brain, oh my gosh, it's getting closer to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And having in the back of your head the knowledge that, hey, if we don't make that dark zone, we're gonna lose 12 hours. That was, to me, my personal roughest part of the race. I think it's part mental. We did end up making the 4 o'clock cutoff by about 10 minutes, but unbeknownst to us, we were at that point, we were told that if we're not off the river by 8 o'clock, then you'd have to stop in the middle of the river. There was no way for us to do that, basically a 4 or 5 hour section in 2 hours. And so we ended up getting stuck midway on the river with Team Uruguay, which was obviously super frustrating, that knowing that all the teams that were in front of us that had just made it were now proceeding, and now we've got a bunch of catch up to make up in the next 6-7 days. So that was my personal worst part. I don't know if anybody else had one that was they were suffering more.
I do.
Okay.
For me, it was the last 3 or 4 hours of the race. It was the final crossing from the last checkpoint to the finish line. I don't know if you read the race report, but basically we got asked to at some point stop because of a storm was coming. Then the storm apparently was delayed and we could go on. But basically we had to paddle, remind me, it's like 3, 4 miles, if I remember well.
6K.
Yep.
Yeah.
6.
Yeah. And we had side winds, relatively, I would say, big waves coming on the wrong side, if I can say like that, of the outrigger, so on the AMA side. So every wave was kind of have the tendency to flip the boat. It was by night, and I can vividly remember seeing Mary, which was on position 1 of the boat, kind of somewhere in the air in front of us, having like, being impossible to paddle, and that was like this for I think we did like 2-3 hours to do this crossing. So 3-4 miles, 2-3 hours, every single wave. I was because I was Stisman. Every single wave, I was like, okay, that's done. And when David was saying that none of us are saying like bad things, or I was cursing in French quite a lot during that section. That was really intense. And honestly, when we reached the shore, I was just done. It was really, really intense. So.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think you guys sort of highlighted well those various sections that were challenging and frustrating for sure.
Any tips for, when your team hits those kinds of spots? I know we certainly saw New Zealand really struggle on that final paddle, of course, in part because their boat broke apart, but and then that long muddy bike leg, I don't know that they really even captured fully just how excruciating that was on the show. But I mean, what do you guys do as a team when you're just suffering together like that? Does everybody go like into their separate pain cave? Do you talk? Do you, I don't know, sort of encourage each other in some ways? What's the sort of team strategy around those moments?
I give my pack to Mary as my strategy.
Good strategy.
I think the whole thing is you have to find you gotta be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And everyone's suffering, and you can't be the one that's saying my butt hurts from sitting on this bamboo for 12 hours, because everybody's butt hurts. You can't single yourself out, because your teammates, that's the beauty of our sport, right? We're a team, we work as one, and everyone suffers together. And I mean, not to call you out, Jen, but I know Jen was so worked up on the muddy bike section for like a millisecond, I think, was the only time I saw her like mad. And all I did was just take her bike for 30 seconds and she was fine. And it's just those little things that you've got to find. And, you know, Roy did that. I remember also when we were on that bike and we're all like, oh, we haven't been eating because you're just coated in mud. Roy busts out some peanut M&Ms and we're just laughing as we're eating mud coated M&Ms. And then you just keep up and you keep going. And that's just how it works. And, you know, I think any good adventure racer can do that. And, you know, try not to lose your shit out there, because when we had that last paddle, half the time my blade wasn't even in the water because, like Charles said, I was out of the water. The boat was so up in the air that I was like air paddling. And, you know, Jen and Roy had to take more, you know, had to do more work because they're in the middle of the boat. They're actually touching the water. And Charles is trying to keep us from flipping. So everyone just has to step up in that moment. And there's just, you can't complain about it. You just have to, you know, help each other out and keep pushing.
I think that's down to the beauty of racing with experienced people, and that is, I like the way Marie is saying you just have to do it, and it's how it's done. Yeah, I agree with that, but the how it's done comes from years and years and years of practice, and going through those moments and not even thinking of one of us giving up, that it's not even an option. It brings the team together, and we know what we have to do, and that's something which your team become like this. It's just a true joy.
Yeah, it's clearly a lot of trust built up between all of you, which makes a huge difference. We had a question here about race food for people who are kind of stepping out of the 24-hour race into the expedition length. Any tips on go-to race foods, how to fuel yourself, and peanut butter and M&Ms, other kind of guilty pleasure, or maybe not so guilty pleasure snacks that help to get you through these long races?
Our camera on.
No. Well, I guess I think on the team we all have.
I think somebody's unmuted, perhaps. So just everyone maybe want to check your muting there. Go ahead, Jen.
I think on the team, we definitely all have a little bit of different strategies when it comes to our own individual food. For myself personally, I do as much real food as I can. And I guess it's almost a little bit of a joke on the team. I'm packing like as many fresh carrots and apples and stuff into my food bin. And I'm watching Mary put like all the junk of Oreos and chocolate bars and all these things that I don't think I'm going to eat. But then when we actually get out there and she busts them out, they taste pretty good. So I'm always grateful to her for that. But yeah, in general, I'm always looking for just as much real food as I can. I just find it's easier for me to consume, and I just feel better on it rather than just getting so much sugar into the system, especially for these long races. So that's sort of what I do. And then, a lot of something we always probably really look forward to out there is whatever David has prepared. I mean, that's such a highlight to come in and have your crew have something warm and like real, whether that was burritos and eggs he came up with all kinds of great stuff. But yeah, I don't think there's really a right way or a wrong way to go about it, other than I think making sure that you've got a variety of flavors. So whatever that is, that you're doing, if it is bars or whatever, if it's chips, but you do a variety of textures, because what tastes good at one part of a race definitely doesn't taste good later on. And then of course there's the foods that you want to be eating, easier to consume when you're paddling versus when you're trekking. When you're trekking, it's so much easier. You've got two hands free. You can do all kinds of things. You can eat sandwiches way better, or sometimes you do like Mr. Noodles in a bag and we share that around with the spoon or whatnot. But paddling is like, you got to be pretty quick, because every time your paddle's out of the water, that's less power forward to the boat, right? So I think thinking about some of those things, And then the final thing too is when you're, racing in these foreign countries, you don't have access to everything that you normally would. So I think a lot of the weight that we brought for our gear in our boxes was food. We travel from home with as much as the food that we know that we really want to make sure we have there and that we maybe can't get in those countries. So that's always something to really think about in your prep.
I think it's really important every time to have at least some moment of pleasure regarding food. I mean, we suffering during those section. So if food is as well something that you suffer by just eating it, it becomes quite a lot of suffering for that. So I think it's important, as Jenny's saying, that to have something that you like to have and variety. It's two aspects.
So two tips for me. One is Pop-Tarts. So 220 calories per pastry. So that's a big bang for your buck there, and it tastes good. Two is a dehydrated meal called O-meals. And I think Charles sourced this out, but basically O-meals allows you to have a hot dehydrated meal without having to boil water. So it's got a chemical function where you just add any kind of liquid and it does an internal boil on pre-cooked food. So it tastes like a homemade meal. It's really outstanding.
Wow, those are some great tips. Maybe we'll try to, great. Abby just posted the O-meals link in the chat there for anybody who's interested. So we are getting towards the end of our hour, and I think just to close it out, it'd be really nice to hear from you guys about just sort of the race as a whole. Did it unfold the way that you expected it to? I know, well, from talking to some of you individually after the race and also reading the race report, that you expected the race to get a little tougher than maybe it did, or to feel longer than it did. So just wondering kind of, how the race met your expectations and how that affected the way that you raced.
Basically our race report kind of said what our biggest thing was we needed one more day. I think we were really, surviving that last paddle on the ocean, but if we had one more day, another big long trek or bike, I think we would have really moved up further. And that being said, we've learned you can't, you never know on a race like that when they don't give you the maps ahead of time. You really can't account for that. So you really got to take each section one by one and push through it, but you can't forget about the little things that could kick you in the butt later. That I think some of the lead teams, just hearing stories of what happened to them out there is, one more day of racing would have taken one or two of them out. I really expect Patagonia to, whoever gets in there next year, I think it's going to be harder, because I think I would guess the race director did not expect people moving as fast as we were, especially the top five. But technology and adventure racing has come a long way since these guys were involved in the sport, and we move faster, bikes are better, lights are better, people know how to work together. I don't know, it's just in general, I think the sport has progressed like most sports have. And so for us, our biggest disappointment was we just ran out of time, and so that won't happen again. Well, I'll probably be mad on day one when we're pushing harder than I want to, but sometimes you can't wait, you can't wait to lose those moments, because you can't get that back.
Yeah, and the format, Kate, of this race is a little unique as well, right? Mary touched on it, in that you really don't know you don't know the distances, you don't know all of the disciplines, and you get your maps at each camp. And up until then, you didn't know what was ahead of you. So we didn't know when the finish was until we got to the 5th camp and got the maps. And, in 2002, we were one of only 10 teams to finish that race out of 81. And it took us 9.5 days. And so, we were talking with the race director beforehand and asked him, is this a tougher race or an easier race than 2002, do you think? He said, well, it's probably going to be tougher. It's longer. you know, back in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be a 10.5-day, 11-day race for the lead teams. And so I think, yeah, to Mary's point, we raced probably a little too conservatively at the early part of the race. And there just wasn't enough race left for us to try and execute the way we wanted to. So again, after 20 years, you're still learning stuff. But that's the beauty of the sport, right?
It is, and maybe we'll just have to, you know, write in to Mark and Bear and tell them, you know, message from Team Bones, please make it longer, make it harder. I don't know, maybe some more mud, or you know, I don't know what else you guys want to throw into the request here, but yeah, this Eco Challenge Fiji was not enough. Let's go bigger.
No, I think Patagonia.
Hey, we're not saying it was easy.
Fair enough.
And don't forget to give Kevin his due. He was the race director, and he put together an absolutely beautiful race. And
oh, it's phenomenal. It was, yeah, top 3 for sure.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we wind it down at that? So thank you so much, Roy, Mary, David, Charles, Jen. We really appreciate you all being here and just sharing with us about this experience and getting a little bit of an inside scoop into how the race went for you guys. So thank you for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you. And we're looking forward to seeing everybody out on the race course, hopefully in 2021.
We'll be there.
All right.